Well, welcome, and thanks for tuning in to this weekly devotion. I'm Pastor Eric Wooldridge. I'm pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Enumclaw, Washington, and I know quite a few of you, of course, from Messiah there in Auburn, as I served as associate pastor at Messiah from 2012 to 2018, and have wonderful and fond memories of my relationships with so many of you there and that wonderful congregation as well. So it's great to see so many of you right now, and I appreciate that you're taking time for devotions. The devotion for this particular week will be on Psalm chapter 7. We'll be reading the first 8 verses. And here we go. O Lord my God, in you I take refuge. Save me from all my pursuers and deliver me. Or like a lion they will tear me apart. They will drag me away with no one to rescue. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, if I have repaid my ally with harm or plundered my foe without cause, then let the enemy pursue and overtake me, trample my life to the ground, and lay my soul in the dust. Rise up, O Lord, in your anger. Lift yourself up against the fury of my enemies. Awake, O my God, you have appointed a judgment. Let the assembly of the peoples be gathered around you, and over it take your seat on high. The Lord judges the peoples. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, and according to the integrity that is in me. Those final 2 verses of the psalm are very interesting given the time of year that we're in. Here in late October, in our Lutheran congregations, we give a heavy focus to the Reformation and to the themes that are infused into our Lutheran congregations because of that Reformation. And of course, one of the main themes that came through our Reformation history and that we still emphasize in our congregations today is that none of us, by our own merits or actions, are righteous in the eyes of God. So we look back at the last 2 lines of that psalm. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness and according to the integrity that is in me. For the psalmist, and this psalm happens to be attributed to David, the writer might genuinely believe that he is justified, that his integrity would merit God's forgiveness and God's protection. We emphasize in our churches that if we look deeply enough and are honest with ourselves, that none of us merit God's positive judgment, God's protection, God's grace. It is an unearned gift. And so it makes me think about themes of guilt and what that can do in our lives. I think about the book Crime and Punishment, which some of you may have been forced to read back in your high school classes, or maybe you read it for pleasure at some point. It is a brilliant work by a Russian author named Fyodor Dostoevsky, and one of the main themes that he tries to tackle in that classic work is, would it be better to get away with a crime, or would it be better to be caught for that crime? And the book leads us through the story of a man who commits murder to believe that he begins by wanting to get away with his crime and by even thinking he is justified in his crime. His conscience slowly over the course of the story first pricks him and then nags at him and begins to overwhelm him to the point where he absolutely concludes that it would be worse to get away with his crime and live with the guilt and consequences than to be caught for it and face up to what he had truly done. We all have had those experiences either as kids caught with our hands in the cookie jar or for more grave and serious offenses that we have committed to, in a way, want to be caught, to want to be known in the eyes of God. And that takes me back to earlier verses in the psalm. Those verses say, O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, then let my enemy pursue and overtake me and trample my life to the ground. Harsh words, and yet we understand that living an open and honest life is well worthwhile, rather than living in the shadows and trying to hide the reality of who we are. And when we bring out the reality of who we are, we can rightfully expect an angry God, a judgmental God, and then we encounter a God who says no. As you say, let my enemy pursue me and overtake me. As you say, bring punishment for what I have done, God says, I refuse. I instead offer forgiveness and grace, and I offer it specifically in coming among you as Jesus Christ. And so, when we feel this pull toward wanting to be true about ourselves, and then understand that God knows who we are, knows our innermost thoughts, knows exactly who we are and what we've done, and chooses to bring us forgiveness nonetheless, even knowing the darkest parts of our lives, we're faced with a terrifying but exhilarating prospect. If we can't depend on the simplicity of God punishing us as we deserve, our only option is now to live our lives in a way that honors the amazing grace that God has given. So happy living, and have a great week.